I just thought I'd do a really quick little vlog today. I've been thinking about David Lynch movies and how David Lynch reveals a hell of a lot more than most people in Hollywood, but he's revealing it to people who understand the astral dynamic. Mulholland Drive is a really good example. He even kind of, he doesn't just allude to these negative entities, he shows them to you. And he also sort of illustrates how these entities manipulate the timelines. Same with Inland Empire. Twin Peaks is the most extensive of the astral reveal. Obviously, Bob is not a human entity. He is an astral entity at this point, and the lodge is the astral plane. And when they pull back the curtain, it's just obvious symbolism. And I think that's why people were so entranced with Twin Peaks. I remember back in the 90s when Twin Peaks was on, I wasn't in high school and I wasn't watching it, but I babysat for people who watched it and they were obsessed. Like, all of the people I babysat for were into that show. But what he reveals in Twin Peaks is interesting. There's this character named Mike, the one-armed man, and his arm is basically turned into an entity in the lodge. And at one point in the Twin Peaks series, Mike has this line where he says, "We live above a convenience store." And I believe at that point it's when the occupying entity is talking through this man, but anyway, it's all plot points. But they live above a convenience store, and the convenience store is Earth and our plane of existence. They live above our plane, okay? And the convenience store is where they get their food. It's really easy food at a convenience store, and we live in their convenience store. We are their food. Most of us who have gotten anywhere with occult work and studies, and a lot of you who are even just totally like on the outside of it all and you've just picked up enough, know that at least suspect that there may be some kind of other type of predator that is feeding on human energy, feeding on human emotion, feeding on the human soul voltage. In case you're wondering, really, I mean, people who don't have a lot of empathy and emotion are people with extremely low soul voltage, or their soul voltage has been abdicated. I know there's people out there who even maintain that there's a lot of human vessels who don't have souls, and I would say either their souls have been lost or they are completely soul blind, and like narcissists, they're lost in the mirror of matter, or they don't have souls. And I don't really know if an individuated being cannot have access to spirit. I don't think that's the case. So I'm always suspecting all of these things. We have a real problem with semantics and also scientific validity for these things, and yet in my own experience, it's been pretty obvious that there is such thing, and that the imaginal plane, that the subtle bodies, that the emotional body, that the mental body are all part of what is oftentimes lumped into the astral plane, and I did a whole video about this. And I think that science is really starting to go there. Science is going in directions now that, I mean, 20 years ago would not have happened, you know. 15, 20 years ago when the amazing Randy was talking about how cold fusion is a dead duck, science wasn't going into these places. You know, now we see headlines every day that are mind-blowing, and even just silly stuff like how they've scientifically validated tree hugging is helpful. The plasma energy body that surrounds our actual physical body is beginning to be scientifically measured. And the biophotons and the discoveries and the work of people like Fritz Albert Popp are busting the paradigm wide open. So really this whole dynamic that David Lynch reveals is very much a it's not a whistleblowing kind of thing. In a way, I just think David Lynch is making art out of it. I don't get the impression David Lynch is good or bad. I don't really think he's good. I'd lean more towards being on the negative side of things based only upon the networks that he runs with. He seems to be connected with a real killer clown network. But those of us who have awareness of these things tend to notice that we get attacked more, and we also can notice when other people are under the influence of these types of this type of being or consciousness. You know, and everybody's talking about the reptilians. Well, I think I would have to agree more with someone like Laura Knight-Jazwick, who is very cautious about quantifying the hyperdimensional, and that perhaps a lot of what is appearing as reptilian is not so. It's just appearing that way. Or I have a theory about the whole Draco thing. About a year or two ago, I can't remember how long ago this is, I'll dig up the article if I can, they witnessed a giant gamma burst in the constellation of Draco that would have to be like, I think it was like 1 billion years old. And it's my contention that that event might have driven those beings out of there astrally, and they may have ended up here, and they may be feeding on us without corporeal existence. People talking about archons all the time, and the Gnostics wrote extensively about inorganic beings and whatnot. So there's a lot of validity to all of this. And I've had my own experiences and had discussions, and my take is that I think that there are corporeal beings other than us in the galaxy who may also have problems and have infections with these types of beings that are non-corporeal. And so our universe really does seem to host parasites a great deal. Seems like parasites run the show, really. And when it comes down to it, a huge part of my life's work has been about developing immunity to parasites. And I've struggled with physical parasites, and I've struggled with these astral parasites. And my take really is that it's all about the terrain. And just like with the body, they've pretty much kind of proven at this point that you can't get an infection until you're nutrient deficient. You first have to be deficient in some way. You have to have a leak for the parasite to be able to feed. And so the immunity on the physical plane would be to have plenty of nutritional, plenty of nutritional support, and also a very highly oxygenated body. They don't like life. They don't like sunlight. They don't like oxygen. They don't like. These are anaerobic beings, I believe, both on the physical and astral. So like another name that they've been called, these astral parasites have been called macrobes. And just like microbes are what feed on us in the physical plane, these macrobes are what are feeding on us on the astral plane. I don't think that a large majority of them are individuated sentient consciousness. I think they're part of a network of consciousness. And just like the Borg, they are very much of a hive mind in a bad way. The truth about it is, and I think I've said this in other videos, is basically there's this natural spiritual hierarchy, and then there are these external hierarchies. And for me, it really is all coming down to why spirit descends into matter and then gets so lost in it that it tries to escape itself even further. It's a very bizarre thing to me. Although I'm convinced now the universe allows it for whatever lesson it serves, and that it allows individuated beings to go very far into entropy and into the darkness. And I believe that we all do return. Everything returns. Whether it returns individuated or not is anybody's guess. What I notice is people who are heavily hijacked by parasites lose their sense of self, their sense of individuation, their sense of connection to their core spirit, and they get lost in the material. And so what we're finding is people are heavy-duty parasites, are very, very materialistic to the point where they want to live forever in cyborg bodies. They don't want to return to spirit. They don't want to connect. And the reason for that is it's very painful. And that they would have to, their external assimilation is illogical, as Bach would say, and they would have to come back to the soul and the heart. You cannot connect with spirit unless you have emotional connection. The emotion is how we connect to our inner being. And the emotional intensity of the negative emotions can be very disconnecting, and this is why trauma disconnects us. And they first, often they first traumatize and then assimilate your consciousness.